Welcome to Open BxRx Tuesday on BronxNet. I'm your host, Kibin Alleyne, and I'd like to invite you to get social with us at BronxNet TV on Instagram and Twitter, and BronxNet Community Television on Facebook. Hashtag Right to Remain Silent is a campaign aimed to protect youth interrogated by police. Now, organizations are advocating for new legislation ensuring the protection of those under 18 when encountering law enforcement. Organizations BronxConnect and Legal Aid Society joined me for a discussion on this initiative. Thank you all for joining me.
Thank you.
Great being here. Thank you.
Now, can you tell me about your organization BronxConnect?
We'd love to. Well, our organization is actually Urban Youth Alliance, and Urban Youth Alliance started in 1970, and it really was a strong youth work. And it was engaging students within the local community and the local church community to establish strong leaders. And then in 1999, we got this challenge, and the challenge came from public and private ventures. And the question was, could the local church, the Christian church, have an impact on those who are court involved and justice involved? And thus in 1991, ATI was formulated, which is our alternative to incarceration program. And shortly thereafter, our ATD program. And we've gladly served the youth and the young adults of the Bronx Center.
Now, one of your most recent initiatives is hashtag Right to Remain Silent. Can you tell me more about that?
This initiative was a very important initiative that started over 3 years ago. It was an initiative that was spearheaded by the Legal Aid Society, and BronxConnect, we came along for it. One of the things that we realized was that our young people were running into an issue when facing interrogations. And the biggest points, and if I can, I guess, put this in a nutshell for what this bill says, is this bill basically takes any questions out of it. The right away, as soon as the police come and take a young person and begin to take them into interrogation, they first have to connect them with legal assistance. So they first have to go and whether it's over the phone or whether it's in person, they have to be able to speak to a lawyer. This takes it out of the young people's hands. It takes it out of the police hands, because one of the things that we also realize is that with young people, they're being that they're young and their brains are still developing. Making the decisions on the moment is a little tougher. So this makes the process automatic. So again, in a nutshell, what it says is that police have to connect a young person with legal assistance at the moment that they're detained and being brought into interrogation.
Now, Lisa, can you explain why there is a need for this?
So there's a need for this because, as anyone who has parented a teenager knows, young people do not understand what it means to waive a constitutional right. They don't understand the long-term import of that decision. And so just like you wouldn't want your own child to be in a police interrogation room, having the police explain to them what their rights are and having them make that decision on their own, people that can afford private counsel do so, but all children should have a right to private counsel. This is a constitutional right. So I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. All children should have a right to counsel at that stage, and do have a right to counsel at that stage. They just don't understand that they have the right to counsel at that stage. So this is essential in order to protect the constitutional rights of children.
Now, what typically happens in situations where kids and teens are interrogated by police?
So typically what happens is that a police officer is allowed to lie to a young person. It's legally permitted. And they can say things to them like, if you cooperate, we will work with the DA to go, easier on you. Or if you tell us what happened, you'll be able to go home. So young people are particularly susceptible to that kind of coercive environment. And so typically more than 90% of young people waive their right to remain silent and go ahead and make statements that can then go on to be used against them.
Can you explain why this may be challenging for some young people?
Why it may be challenging for young people to be interrogated by the police?
Well, why it's challenging that for them to understand that they're waiving their rights or that they don't have to say anything.
Well, as I mentioned, the police are allowed to lie to them. And often, often, for instance, a parent may be there and may think that it's in their child's best interest to cooperate with authorities, that they need to appear cooperative, that that's important, even if it isn't in the child's best interest. So, so young people in particular don't understand the long-term consequences of that decision. They think, oh, if I do something now, it will help me right now, without thinking about what the implications are for down the road when they're in court. And in fact, the research shows that young people falsely confess at a higher rate than adults do, because again, they don't understand the long-term implications. They want to say whatever they think it is that the authorities want them to say, because they think that will help get them, able to go home.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. I did not know that, and it's pretty, like, just crazy. So thank you for sharing that. Now, you mentioned this before. What does it mean to have a right to counsel?
Well, what this bill provides is that when a young person is arrested and is going to be interrogated, because that's when these rights kick in, they only kick in when you're going to be interrogated by the police. This would entitle that young person to speak to an attorney, either by phone or in person, so that that attorney could explain to them thoroughly and advise them about their legal rights. So just like I was mentioning earlier, if my child were arrested, I would immediately call for a private attorney because I could afford one and have that person represent the child at the time of interrogation. But most people, by far the majority of people, cannot afford attorneys and do not have representation at the time that they are being interrogated by the police. And so essentially the police are able to take advantage of the fact that children don't understand their rights and as a result waive that right. And this would instead ensure that they are given the protection that they need of this constitutional right that we are all supposed to have.
Now, I understand that this was inspired by the Exonerated Five. Uh, BronxConnect, can you tell me a little bit more about this?
Yeah, sure. So, as we all know, the experience that the exonerated five went through was horrific. It was an injustice towards the process, and it really gave a black eye to the legal system here and how we handle things. So when in coming up with this bill, I know that the thinking was we want to make sure that this doesn't happen to anyone else. Unfortunately, this is a situation that's not just a one-off. It's not just, hey, it happened to these five, but the reality is that it's happening every single day. I've gotten a chance to speak to some of the young people here, even at BronxConnect, and they hearing them talk about their experiences with interrogations. It's mind blowing. As an adult, I'm in my 40s now, and if I were pulled in front of the police and some of the tactics that we use, I don't know how I will respond. So so this bill really protects, as Lisa was mentioning, it protects the young people. It protects the young people of our community and helps us to give them a way out. A lot of times, they don't have a way out. Not really having access, as Lisa mentioned, to legal aid, their own lawyers, or not even knowing that, hey, you know what, I can say no to police. This is a bill that is much needed for this time.
I really appreciate the fact that you brought up that you wouldn't even know how to handle that situation because I think that is just a very real thing. I love that it's geared towards children and younger people, but I think there are so many people who just don't understand that. That kind of leads into my next question. What effect do you think this bill would have on Black and Latin communities just overall in New York City?
I'd love
So I
to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Lisa. If I might add, forgive me, Lisa, if I might add, I think it's an excellent question when you ask what effect we think the bill would have on the Black and Brown community. I just want to add that during the time when we were referring to these young men as the Central Park Five, I was actually a student at John Jay College. I want to add that at the time when this arrest was going on, I lived in East Harlem. I lived in Taft Projects, and many of these young people were lived only blocks from me in either direction, east or the west. And my brother went to school with one of the young men. And one of the things that we all were sitting on our seats about, and one of the things that alarmed us greatly was the fact that they were minors. One of the things that we wanted was someone to jump up and save them. And although their parents had what was in their best interest, they were in a sense duped by the system. And so, what do we think? Some of the effect would be young people not being taken advantage of, young people not being pressured and duped into confessing to something maybe that they had not done. It would be us as a society protecting young people. What would be in the best interest of the child? And it is surely not giving up your rights to comply with maybe a lie because you're now feeling afraid and pressured, and you're afraid that you may not go home. So one of the effects would truly be maybe less young people entering the justice system. And Lisa, I hope you jump right in and continue on.
I think everything that you said is exactly right. The reality in New York City, in particular, is that the vast majority of people who are arrested are young men of color, and they are people that don't come from communities of privilege and therefore don't have the benefit of a private attorney. And so this is really making real the constitutional right that we are all supposed to have, even for people who don't have money. And that should be what justice is about, right? A level playing field for everyone.
So we have about 2 minutes left. I really want to know what could be done to further educate these communities and these young people on what to do in these situations. And do you think this should be talked about in schools?
I love that question because, first, we always believe that a strong community should worry about the least of these, right? Those individuals who have less or the most vulnerable. So I do believe that we have a responsibility to the minors in our city. We have a responsibility to those who are not as socioeconomically well off, right? To allow there to be a level playing field. And I do think that schools is they're just still that gathering place. They should still be the place of learning and protection. And I would say that local schools, right, from middle school and up, we should always equip them with the information that's needed to protect themselves. I believe it would just be so valuable that from the age of or the grade of seventh grade on, that we're giving the community, that we're giving students this information, and maybe even the parents at parent teacher conference nights, because again, we want to equip the communities.
All right, well, I want to thank you all so much for joining me to discuss this really important topic.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with more Open BxRx Tuesday.